Welcome to our podcast. Today we are talking with Jon Waldrep from California State Aid Commission on financial aid for college. The California State Aid Commission, known as CSAC, with the California state government, focuses on making education beyond high school financially accessible to all Californians. Jon has worked with the California State Aid Commission for 4 years as a site coordinator, where he coordinates the high school counselor workshops for high school counselors throughout California. And he is greatly involved in training and outreach programs, which I have benefited greatly from. Thank you, Jon. And prior to CSAC, the California State Aid Commission, Jon worked in the private sector and has also lived in Europe for 11 years, where he taught English and ran his own language school. Welcome, Jon, to the show.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So what are the greatest joys that you have working at CSAC, and why have you dedicated so much time serving others to gain college opportunities?
Well, I think one of the great things about CSAC is that you sort of immediately see tangible results from your work. So you're able to see that what you do is directly benefiting the student. You might have a conversation with the student, and 3 minutes later, they've gone from not being awarded, to awarded. So I think that's the greatest thing for me, is that you see evidence of that what you're doing is really helping.
Oh, fantastic. And before we go into the details of financial aid, can you share a story of how CSAC, the California State Aid Commission, through financial aid like Cal Grant, has made a huge impact on a student for our listeners?
We have lots of stories like that. In particular, I remember, so our unit does a lot of outreach, and I do a lot of outreach, and I particularly like working with our Dreamers in California, so our undocumented students. And I did an event at a local high school, and a young lady came up to me and she said, "I'm just really frustrated. I'm trying to apply with the DREAM Act application." And she had literally everything that could go wrong, went wrong. So she had a lot of different issues. But I said, you know what, call me at work and we'll try to walk you through some of these things. And she did. And we spent, I want to say 3 weeks plus trying to get everything fixed. And at the end of the day, we did. And so, it literally was a difference between allowing her to go to school or her not going to school. And so she was really thankful, and she went on to start at a local community college. And she became an advocate for Dreamers and kind of said, you know what, I'm going to pay this forward a little bit. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I think also it's cool that you've been paying it forward too. Not only are you helping students, but other high school counselors. But I think also the important message for our listeners to know is that in case they don't know anybody around their community to help them for financial aid, they could pick up the phone or go on your guys' Instagram at CA Student Aid or Twitter or Facebook page and get that help from even the California State Aid Commission like you, Jon.
Yeah, no, we encourage students to contact us if they're having issues with their Cal Grant. We get lots of unrelated questions, and we certainly try to steer them in the right direction. And we also encourage kids to go to things like Cash for College events and financial aid nights and things like that.
Great. Can you explain to our listeners, in case they've never heard of Cash for College, and in case their school doesn't sponsor one?
Yeah, so even if their school doesn't sponsor a Cash for College, that we did over 1,000 in the state of California last year. So certainly there's one near them, and Cash for College it's a free event. And its specific goal is to help students and their families complete and successfully submit an application. So in this case, either a FAFSA or a California DREAM Act application. And the great thing about it is you show up. There are volunteers there who will sit you down at a computer and literally walk you through every step of the process. These are people that typically have done this quite a bit. So you'll have trained volunteers. You'll have a lot of times you'll have people who speak different languages as well. And, if you're doing this for the first time, or your family is just, if your parents are really struggling with this idea of how do I apply, I highly recommend going to a Cash for College event. They're really helpful. And like I said, they're free and they're everywhere.
Right. So if they go to the CSAC website, which is csac.ca.gov, and then just kind of put in the search menu Cash for College, they could find a local Cash for College workshop in their area. And even if it's hosted at a high school that's not their high school, they could attend because it's open to the public.
Yeah, they're all open to the public, so they can attend anywhere. So once they get on the actual Cash for College site, if they just plug in their zip code, they'll find the closest ones and they can sign up to go. It's easy.
Fantastic. So what are the main hurdles from your years of experience that you've seen students have when they are applying for financial aid?
I think we see a lot of the same things. I think there's still students who you don't realize they can apply, and I would say that's especially for our dreamers. But the usual things that we see are they miss a deadline because they don't realize there is a deadline, and when they're filling out the application, sometimes it's challenging for them to go get through the financial information because it's a little convoluted. Sometimes we see students make simple mistakes on the application. I mean, something as silly as misspelling your middle name can really hold you up, or if you put the incorrect, birth date or address, those things can be an issue because then it's not going to match with other information in the system, like your GPA. I think that, there's a host of things, just not understanding how the process. So, again, I go back to work with your high school counselor, attend your financial aid events on your campus, and if they don't have any, find someone that can help you at a Cash for College event.
Yeah, and I think every year I have, there's always a high school senior. It's like, oh, I didn't know this was my legal name. Like they just didn't realize. I'm not even exaggerating. Every year there's one senior that doesn't know that. So yeah, so as soon as they have a hiccup, ask some questions and use the resources that are available to you. But financially is available for all, and be prepared that there may be some hiccups, right? So it's always starting earlier versus later is going to be one of those things that help reduce that stress and then that anxiety.
Well, and so I think there's a couple components. One, starting early is key because that way, if there are mistakes made, you have time to correct those mistakes and to find help. Be prepared. There are lots of checklists of, saying here's what you need to fill out the application. So it's like painting, right? It's 80% preparation. If you have all those documents and you have all that information and you have all those dates, filling out the application is a relatively easy process at that point. You can do it in well less than an hour. If you're not prepared, that's where you struggle. And, we want to avoid people starting the application and never quite getting it done because they were missing some component. So, yeah, start early, get together everything you need to get together, including, tax information, et cetera. And then, that makes it much easier.
Great. And is there any questions? So if a student or family is preparing for the financial aid and this is their first time, is there any questions that they should have ready ahead of time to ask maybe some of the colleges or just some things to help them to move the process even smoother?
Well, in terms of questions, I think students, by and large, need to start earlier when they start considering where they want to go to school. So, I think it's important that they attend college fairs and events where colleges are present, or, visit local colleges. Virtually every college in the state has a program where you can walk on campus and get a tour and ask questions. So I think they need to start that process earlier. And then, they need to, when they're actually applying, we encourage students to don't apply to just, even if you go, I'm going to go to this local community college and that's it. Well, list other schools, list a school from every segment, because even though you're not thinking about going to that school, one, it's kind of a plan B, but more importantly, you'll see what kind of financial aid you would get, at a different institution. So, it's valuable that way.
Right. It definitely is. And there are some thoughts out there that only like top students can get financial aid, or that financial aid is only for really low income students. And that even some private colleges don't even provide financial aid, it's only scholarships. Are any of these thoughts true?
Well, obviously the greater your financial need, the more likely it is that you'll get financial aid. That's certainly a component. but it's only one of the components. Sometimes we have families who say, we don't think we're going to qualify, so we're not even going to apply. When in fact, even if they weren't eligible for a Cal Grant, for example, the student could be eligible for a middle class scholarship. So, if the family makes less than $172,000, if the student's going to a UC or a CSU, could get up to 40% of their tuition paid. And I don't think they realize that. And that's just, all they need to do is fill out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application. There's nothing more complicated than that. The other thing is, it's kind of a myth, don't apply. So maybe you think your son or daughter is going to be going out of state. Okay, great. Let them apply to those schools, but list a California school as well.
Right.
That's your plan B. And there's a lot of aid that you have to fill out on the application for, and also loans. So even if you go, I'm not going to get aid, you might still get institutional aid. There might be programs that would offer you that, or there might be a loan that you have to, end up taking out, and you would have had to have completed an application to do that.
Yeah. So, no, I think that even goes more to the point where people's college list should have some diversity in it, because circumstances also can change where maybe you don't need financial aid, but then something happens with your family. It's like, oh, things have totally changed, exactly. And circumstances may happen. So the government requires each college to provide what's called the net price calculator. Can you tell our listeners what is the net price calculator and how it is a useful tool for our families?
Well, so all colleges have to provide information about the cost, the approximate cost to go to that school. So they provide that information so that students have a better idea of the true cost. Unfortunately, we're finding that sometimes that information is not as up to date or as accurate as we would like it to be. Because segment by segment, the costs are certainly different depending on where you're going to go. Financial aid is based on the cost of attendance, and so the cost of attendance is what colleges and universities provide the state every year, and then that's part of the calculation to see if the students need aid. But more importantly, it's a planning tool so students have an idea of at least an approximate idea of what it's going to cost to go to that particular college.
Yeah, so instead of this waiting game that a lot of college graduates had to go through, waiting till like spring semester to find out how much financial aid they're going to get, families as early as someone who's in 9th or 10th grade or even earlier could get a ballpark idea of the approximate cost of the attendance and their net price, meaning the price that they would have to pay out of pocket for the school, not including the loans and such.
No, exactly. So you can start, and again, I think it's important to start that process early because, students may have an idea of where they're going to go, but they could certainly look at the cost of different schools that they're interested in, or because of the programs that they offer. Parents know about how much money they make and what they have in assets, so you could start looking at that early on. You're right. As a freshman or a sophomore, you can get that information, look at that information. And kind of have a ballpark idea of, if you're going to get aid or not. Again, the parents who are on top of this are the ones who are in the counselor's office, are calling, the minute their kiddo crosses the border there, and their freshman year, and that's great. They're all about making sure that they have a game plan going forward. Yeah,
and I even tell my students that if their parents are too busy, because some of them may be working 2 jobs or there may be a language barrier, then for students to fill it out and just even do a ballpark, like they could, it doesn't have to be a perfect answer. It's not the actual financial aid form, but that gives them an idea, and then more importantly, gives them a tool of a variable of, is this truly a best fit school also for affordability, right? Because, that's something that needs to be played into that factor as well, too. So it's a great tool out there. Another tool that I was wondering if you could share with our audience is about the college scorecard, because a lot of families out there get worried about average loan debt for a campus. Students' loans are, and loans in general, are part of financial aid. So where is a place where a family or student can find out how much is the average loan that this school has, and how well